we're now moving on to motions. We will now debate the first two motions that are listed on the order paper. The first motion for debate is the Green motion on a homes policy that complies with the new Lambeth Local Plan. The speaking order is as listed on the order paper. Councillor Pete Elliott, you have 5 minutes to open the debate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm proud to bring this motion to Council. I realise it is long and that there is a lot to digest in it. There is a lot of vital information here that we, as a Council, need to really understand and implement. This motion has been co-produced by the Green Group and by local experts who really understand the science and the engineering required to start to turn things around. This motion reflects the views of our residents. Since this Council declared a climate emergency in January 2019, the scale of the problem has got exponentially worse. Hopefully, though, public awareness of a potential environmental catastrophe has grown, especially in the last 6 months, and that knowledge is accelerating. We were the first borough to declare a climate emergency in London, and since then we have wallowed in that title and delivered nothing of real substance that changes things. We've done a lot of talking, but other councils are now ahead of us in doing things. I'm not saying we've done nothing, but on the big issues, we have not yet had an impact. The days of greenwash and kicking the can down the road need to be over, and we need to tackle the climate crisis and the housing crisis head on. We need to lead on taking meaningful steps to address the environmental emergency that, with every passing day of relative inaction, we are making worse. All the proposals in this motion will not only benefit our chances of survival over the next few decades, but they are also socially just and will go some way to levelling things up for residents. The Labour amendments are partisan and ignorant, two things that we mustn't be when it comes to tackling this crisis. All the petty infighting inside the Labour Party prevents you from being a coherent and robust opposition to the Tory government nationally and holds back meaningful progress locally. The climate crisis demands that we work together across party lines and collaboratively with other organisations and individuals to turn this oil tanker around. This crisis is literally life or death, both for people here and around the world. A large programme of retrofitting will deliver warm, dry homes to thousands of our residents. 9,700 people, of whom die every year due to cold in the UK because we have the worst housing stock in Western Europe. Poverty kills and fuel poverty kills. Many residents are choosing to either heat their homes or feed themselves. Warm, dry homes also present a saving to our national and local health services. The Tories have taken money from national energy efficiency schemes, so we can't expect those in Westminster to help us out. We need to demonstrate real leadership here in Lambeth. There are significant job opportunities if we retrofit our homes, creating wealth and warmth at the same time. This should please those people who prioritise economic growth. This programme would be the opposite of the destructive estate demolition programme, which produces negative outcomes for the communities caught up in the nightmare and has already contributed to 2 deaths that I know of. Regeneration is not social justice. It is social cleansing as we transform our estates from 30% to 70% private homes. Regeneration will not deliver the housing Lambeth needs now, nor in the future. Other boroughs have seen this and are reversing their plans on demolitions. How many of those new private Homes for Lambeth homes will be snapped up by people based overseas or in tax havens? These homes are not aimed at local people or communities. Where we are building homes, we need them to be built to the highest standards. It makes financial and environmental sense. If we are going to be a carbon neutral borough by 2030, we don't want to be needing to retrofit homes that we are building now when we have all the knowledge and technology to get things right first time. Financing is an issue, but here we need to get creative. Just as this council has managed to get creative when it comes to finding money for the redress scheme, the new town hall, or Homes for Lambeth and its directors. When will Homes for Lambeth pay off all the costs of regeneration? And can you evidence this? Carbon offsetting is not a solution. The costs of not retrofitting across the borough will be immeasurable as sea levels rise and extreme weather events become more regular. For many in the world, those things are already happening. Where is
30 seconds.
Thank you. Where is the social justice there? The climate emergency is an existential threat and requires us all pulling together to do what we can to avert the worst of it. So far, Lambeth Council has not changed anything significant in its ways of working, and if my colleagues vote for the Labour amendment to the Green motion, then they will be demonstrating that they don't understand the nature of the crisis and the actions that need to be taken. You will also be putting clear ground between the Green Party and Labour as we go into next year's elections, by setting us up to be the party for social justice and the environment, and Labour as the party of estate demolitions and corporate interests.
Time.
Perfect.
Madam Mayor, could I make a point of order?
Point of order.
Yeah, if I could, yes, if I could just have that minute. Councillor Elliott just accused Labour benches of social cleansing.
It's the point of order.
Point of order. It is a point of order, Councillor Ainsley. So could I deliver it, please?
He knows there's a minute. So
I know there's a minute. And
it's the procedure.
it's a point of order about Councillor Elliott's comments. It's very similar to Councillor Thackeray, so I would like to make that point of order.
Right.
Is that okay?
Which piece of the Constitution are you?
I'm quoting the same bits that Councillor Thackeray has already quoted. So can I be allowed to finish my point? Is that okay? So Councillor Elliott, I think, has breached the same principles that Councillor Holland was accused of breaching earlier on in this meeting. He referred to this side of the chamber of conducting social cleansing and have also been ignorant. So can I have that registered, that I think exactly the same terms have been breached by the opposition as were breached earlier on? Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Your objection is noted. However, I now wish to move on with tonight's business. So we have Councillor Maria Kay. Maria, you have 3 minutes.
Could I make a point of personal clarification, please? Under the Constitution, we are allowed to make a point of personal clarification.
Personal clarification?
Yes.
Please make it.
Okay, thank you very much. What has just been said by what's been allowed to be said in this chamber, without having to chapter and verse quote which part of the Constitution Councillor Gadsby was referring to, I wish to make a point that this is what the people of Lambeth are saying. This is not necessarily an insult that is thrown by Councillor Elliott or the Green Group. This is what people on the estates are saying, and it's been widely publicised, for example, in the Estates Gazette in 1999, that this is what it is called. We're merely stating facts. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, is it possible to get a point of personal clarification? Colleagues, I'm going to share my story this evening about violence against women and girls and the way in which this chamber is currently conducting themselves. I'm sitting here shaking. I am terrified of what I'm going to say and how people are going to react. Please, can people amend themselves with some form of decorum and respect for Councillor Kay, who's going to speak in a minute, and colleagues further along the line. Thank you.
Okay, can we now please move on and stick to our process? Thank you. Councillor Maria. Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Lee, and I completely echo your points that you've just raised right now. I'm going to focus on facts and evidence and not speculation. From reading through this motion put forward by the Greens, it is clear that they have little grasp of the complex issues facing social housing in Lambeth and in London generally, as well as the finances behind it. The challenges in social housing are massively complex, and the Greens motion oversimplifies the issues as usual without showing any understanding of the finances and proposing borrowing that we can't afford that would lump council tenants with increased rents. Over a decade of austerity and government cuts, a huge chunk of council staff let go. What do we expect? We need a properly funded social housing sector. with adequate funding for local government from central government. Otherwise, local authorities are working with one hand tied behind their back. Despite working like this with over a decade of underfunding from and Tory Lib Dem imposed cuts and enforced rent reductions, meaning our HRA loses dozens of millions of pounds a year, We have invested £500 million in new kitchens, bathrooms, windows, roofs, doors over the last 7 years, and over £30 million a year as part of our capital programme. Since 2018 alone, we have improved well over 5,200 homes. That means new bathrooms, new kitchens, roofs, windows, doors, warmer, drier, safer homes, and tens of thousands of our residents, and that's just over the last 3.5 years. Prior to that, our Lambeth Housing Standard programmes meant that tens of thousands of our council tenants benefited from similar improvements, making our homes fit for the present day. There are masses that we continue to do, including fundamentally changing our systems, a suite of new contracts, monitoring and scrutiny structures, bring our communal repairs in-house and delivering on both a key manifesto commitment and on the recommendations of our own residents. Colleagues, I encourage you to vote for the Labour amendment on this motion tonight, not simply because the motion that the Greens bring for us to understand the complexities of housing management, housing delivery, and crucially, finances. Thank you.
Councillor Jane Pickard, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I think climate change is something we obviously all care deeply about, and there is much that we can agree with in the Greens motion. But it's just sad they keep jumping on this anti-estate regeneration bandwagon, which rolls along fueled by misinformation and a degree of emotion. A friend told me recently that only 2 council rent homes were due to be built in the new Trinity Rise block, which has just been approved. Wrong, it's actually 14 council homes. Others believe tenants will be kicked out of their homes and never allowed back. That won't happen, not in Lambeth. That's a Tory Wandsworth trick, the Wandsworth that Councillor Briggs would like us to copy. Or they believe there will be no extra council homes on the Central Hill estate than there were when the regen was planned, because the Greens have included homes recently bought from leaseholders for demolition. They've included them as council homes. Our entire community drinks in these factual errors and mangled statistics. No scheme so far has been less than 50% affordable, of which 70% are at council rent levels. Several, such as Knight's Walk, have been 100% affordable in the first phase, and if the government will give us the money, they could carry on being 100% affordable. Or we'll have more council rent homes than they started off with. Or we'll house people on the waiting list. Then there's emotion around this subject. Of course, it's upsetting for residents to have their homes demolished, especially for leaseholders, but it cannot be made the reason for denying the right to a new home for the majority of tenants who say this is what they want, many of whom have waited years in overcrowded flats for a transfer that never comes. Retrofitting would be no use to them. It especially cannot be made the reason for keeping people stuck forever on the housing waiting list. People live in appalling private tenancies. People like the young woman in my ward who spent 4 years sleeping on the sofa in her mother's living room, now with a baby and a toddler. Then there's the 3,000 families in temporary accommodation. Like the woman I met who travels every day from South Croydon to Brixton with a baby and 2 children to take the oldest to school and the middle one to nursery. She then has to hang around Brixton all day in all weathers with the baby to pick up her children. These people's voices are never heard in this debate. Their votes wouldn't even be counted in an estate ballot. But there is one place where their vote does count, and that is in the local elections. And guess what? Most of them vote Labour, because they know we will build the housing they need. They know the Greens are the party of the middle class and do not represent them. We do, and they know it.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a point of personal clarification according to the Constitution. Madam Mayor, if I may raise a point of order.
You insisted, and of course we have to. It's point of order, did you say?
It's a point of personal clarification. I was brought up on a council estate by a single mother. I am in the Green Party. I am certainly not middle class.
Thank you.
And neither have many of my colleagues.
Please. Councillor Tim. Sorry, Matthew, I've nearly forgot you. Councillor Matthew Bennett, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and how dare you. So it's always intimidating to follow Councillor Pickard because she always says everything that I want to say, but says it 100 times better and with more force. And similarly from Councillor Kay, both of whom set out very powerfully the problems that exist with this green motion, which I have to say looks neither well researched nor well written when you go through it. We've already had the Greens complaining about us misrepresenting. I don't think so. The motion from the Greens quotes and says that we should explore using Public Work Loan Board loans to fund retrofit in Lambeth. It goes on to say, and I quote, that we should borrow against the HRA assets to fund retrofit. That has consequences. That's just not a throwaway thing. That is a real thing that you are proposing in the run-up to an election. And thankfully, we've got the ability to actually ask officers what that would mean, and we've done that. At the lowest estimate of £835 million to retrofit Lambeth stock, at the low estimate of £25,000 per unit, significantly less than its cost to retrofit at Myattsfield South, by the way, that would come in at a borrowing cost of £30 million a year. If the Green Party wants to propose doing that in the HRA, the only way to fund that is to cut the entire repairs budget. If you want to do that through the general fund and borrow there, the cost of borrowing is equivalent to about a 22% hike in council tax. So what is the Greens' proposal if they're going to vote for their motion this evening against ours, which rules out council tax hikes or cuts to services? What is their proposal for retrofit? If it's not to fund it that way, where's the money coming from? Or is it just a slogan? And then, of course, we hear the Tories merrily getting along with the Greens in this strange green-blue institutional alliance. Councillor Briggs looking fondly across at Wandsworth, Councillor Bartley, where of course used to be a Tory councillor, Tory activist, not a councillor, he never got that far, working together saying that this is a good idea. Again, look at the track record in Wandsworth on social housing and look at what we're doing in Lambeth. Because as Councillor Pickard says, this green motion once again fails to acknowledge the scale of the housing crisis. A housing crisis, Councillor Ainsley has previously said, doesn't exist. Last night at Planning Committee, unanimously, we saw a regeneration project where the amount of social housing is doubled. A Roman rise on Central Hill where Councillor Elliott tried to stand in the way of workers, 7 empty rooms turning into 22 council homes. This is where we are delivering more homes for people at the same time as building to better quality, building homes that are larger, building homes that are better insulated, building homes that over the long term bring down the carbon emissions in a way that is sustainable and make sure that residents live in good quality homes, homes that they deserve, homes that this Labour Council is building, homes the Green Party oppose.
Councillor Tim Briggs, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I've listened carefully to what colleagues have said, and so many have just not really addressed the issue around retrofitting and the point of the motion. And I'm just going to quote 2 bits of the motion, which I think is a very important, serious and well-researched motion, and I'm minded to vote for it. Let me just, it says here, the current new build residential developments are encouraged to use the home quality mark and passive house design standards. The current estate regeneration programme is being progressed could lay the council open to costly and protracted legal challenge, because the government's forthcoming zero carbon ready standard for new buildings 2025 will make those new builds obsolete. Future council taxpayers will be burdened with major financial retrofitting liabilities for those buildings to meet the 2050 zero carbon standard. What is the Labour response to that in their amended motion? Just strike through it. Oh, we don't want to deal with that. We'll just strike through it. And then underneath it says, Carbon offsetting should not be used for new buildings as an alternative to building to high standards. It's many times more expensive retrofitting later than building to the appropriate standards initially. So what is the response by Labour to that? Just strike through it. Oh, well, we won't answer that. We'll just struggle on. We'll just stumble on. It's not good enough. It's not an appropriate response. For me, that's the sort of ratio of this. That's the point of this motion, is to address that. And it's not addressed by Labour. And I look at, I approach this from a slightly different angle to my Labour colleagues as to why I might support this motion. Let me just give you my reasons. First of all, it's immoral for a landlord not to do proactive annual repairs, which is what Labour Lambeth doesn't do, or repair a property properly and then claim disrepair as a reason for demolishing someone's house. As far as I'm concerned, that's just immoral. Secondly, it's immoral for a landlord to use the fact of disrepair in a property as a result of their own neglect, the landlord's own neglect, as a reason to demote the security and law of tenancies belonging to residents, which is what's happening, contrary to what Councillor Pickard has said, or is what has happened. Thirdly, the data collected by Lambeth Council on why estates should be demolished, which we always hear about from Councillor Bennett, is worthless and politicised, and it doesn't provide an objective basis for comparing retrofitting with demolition and rebuild. Fourthly, Wandsworth Council have better figures. I'm sorry, Councillor Bennett, I'm happy to give them to you. I'll email them to you. Have better figures on building social housing, better figures on amount of built housing. I'll send them to you, Councillor, don't worry. But Wandsworth Council have shown that if you're creative and flexible, you can build new properties on existing council land and within existing estates without the need for demolition. They've built 1,000 new additional council properties in that on land already the last 2 years. And lastly, there are good environmental reasons. So for those reasons, I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Scott Ainsley, you have 5 minutes to close the debate.
Thank you. Sadly, it's abundantly clear from COP26 that our national government will fail to act quickly enough to genuinely keep global temperature rise to within the limits set in Paris. As we saw with the pandemic, where national or regional governments fail to act, let local government take the lead and deliver the necessary actions to protect their citizens. Labour's amendments to our motion have slashed and burned it to such an extent that the public must seriously doubt that Lambeth Labour can deliver secure, warm, dry and energy efficient homes by 2030. Their first amendment on the very first line of our motion sets the tone. They score out that it's been 3 years since we passed the climate and ecological emergency motion, only to try and boast that Lambeth was the first in line to do so. Well, what's the point of setting off first when you're just going to drag your heels or lack a clear vision to get to the finishing line? Words are easy, action is what matters. Their next major amendment to our motion, with one stroke of a pen, epitomises the issue that has thwarted their administration for the past few election cycles and that will cause their demise. That is, of course, their policy of regeneration. A policy that is ridden roughshod over communities with far too little regard for the people who live there, as they seek to demolish their genuinely affordable council homes and build genuinely unaffordable council homes on our 6 largest estates. Many of the senior officers that have tried to deliver that have left the council. Lambeth Labour's policy was set out clearly and honestly in an Estates Gazette article in 1999, that they will use housing policies to deliberately gentrify the borough, cleansing estates of social housing tenants, giving developers a free rein to build luxury flats for the owner-occupier middle classes. Many of those are not even occupied, as Councillor Elliott mentioned earlier on. How does Regen fit with the Lambeth Local Plan on promoting community cohesion and safe, livable, accessible neighbourhoods? We have those. No wonder Thatcher said Tony Blair was her greatest legacy. Labour's amendments to try to greenwash their way through false claims of making use of both low-embodied carbon building materials and life cycle carbon assessments, applying circular economy principles to reuse, blah, blah, blah. I'd like to use language that breaches the code of conduct here, but instead I'll say this. This is total greenwash. It is spin, pure and simple. It's using the same lazy and mythological lines the UK government tries to use. We don't have time for that. Now, I'm no expert, but I'll bet the only recycling that will be achieved from blowing up the much-loved Central Hill estate will be to create some sort of composite to build more roads. Remember when you were caught out trying to include incinerated waste in your recycling figures? No more greenwash. The Nolan principles ask of us in public life to be open, honest, accountable, and have integrity. The simple truth, as sustainable architect Carl Elefanti said, the greenest building is the one that is already built. Our motion asks that Lambeth retrofits 20,000 homes per year to meet energy performance standards to genuinely help deliver net zero by 2030. And as we heard earlier, net zero is not good enough. We can build zero carbon homes, but there are only 40 deep retrofits planned for June 2022, a disgraceful 0.2% of the target for this year. We need the council to go further, faster, with a far more ambitious retrofit plan. And this is a win-win. We can create jobs for many people. Sorry, my technology's failed me tonight. So why don't the councils focus all their energy and resources into a vision of building and retrofitting homes that could provide up to 2,000 good, sustainable jobs in the borough. As we heard earlier, Lambeth have been trailblazers in the past on retrofit. We've heard tonight the people want it and the skills are there. So let's stop dragging our heels and hanging on to a housing policy that should have been put out of its misery years ago. Instead, let's take the reins of building the sustainable and more resilient Lambeth and stop looking to a national government that is out of its depth with this crisis and have the vision to invest in a Green New Deal for Lambeth. As I said, creating good, sustainable, high-skilled jobs, insulating homes, reducing food poverty, keeping and building more genuinely affordable homes, and really delivering a positive green future for Lambeth. We just need the political will to do the right thing. And as for how it will be costed up, we will bring that to you in our budget, which will be at the next full council.
Thank you.